So the Chicago Bulls are off to their best start through 6 games this season since the 2014-15 season, when Tom Thibodeau was the head coach and led the Bulls to a 50-32 record. The Bulls were kind of everybody's darling during the offseason. They made moves getting DeMar DeRozan, getting Lonzo Ball via a sign-and trade thanks to a colossal fuck-up by the Pelicans, and they also signed Alex Caruso to a very reasonable and valuable deal. But the influx of talent on the Bulls roster had everybody picking the Bulls as kind of a dark horse playoff team or a team poised to make the leap next year. Basically everybody loved the Bulls offseason, but the wide range of predicted outcomes that people had heading into this season were varying. People had different opinions of how good this team could be, what's the ceiling, how far could they make a playoff run if they get there. And through the first 6 games of the season, granted it is very early and we should always preface our early season takes with it's early, but the Bulls have kind of shown some promise and have answered some questions, but we're about to find out just how real the Bulls are through this next 15 games or so. First, I kind of want to briefly go over what we have seen from the Bulls so far this season. They are 8th in offensive rating, and I don't think that number is too much of a surprise considering the talent that they added, and I think a lot of people expected the Bulls to be one of the top 12 or at least 10 offenses in the NBA this season, so that much shouldn't be a surprise. They are 8th in offensive rating per cleaning the glass, and I like using cleaning the glass when it comes to offensive rating and defensive rating because they factor out half-court heaves that you see at the end of the quarter, and they also factor out garbage time minutes, so cleaning the glass to me is a good resource for this. They are 8th in offensive rating. They are 5th in defensive rating, which I think has been the surprise so far because it's weird. A lot of people had varying opinions about what they expected from the Bulls defensively this season. Obviously, they added good defenders like Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso. Patrick Williams showed a lot of flashes last year defensively as a rookie, but unfortunately Patrick Williams is out for the season, of course, with that left wrist injury he suffered against the Knicks, so the Bulls will have to retool a little bit. But they also have guys like Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr. They basically have more defensive personnel on this team than what we have seen in previous years. And I wasn't expecting the Bulls to be this awful defense again, but I did think a starting lineup of Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic wasn't really going to be maximized defensively because you only have 2 good defenders in that starting lineup, and the other 3 are just poor. Nikola Vucevic can really only play in a drop coverage setting, really can't switch. So I thought the Bulls were just going to spend the season soul searching and finding an identity on defense. But so far, granted 4 of the games have been against poor teams like the Pistons, the Pelicans. I don't know if the Raptors are going to be really, really bad yet. We'll see. They look promising so far. They have a lot of players I like. But the Bulls have played the Pistons, the Pelicans, and the Raptors, which kind of helps out the defensive rating a little bit. But in their 2 recent matches against the Knicks and most recently in their game against the Utah Jazz over the weekend, they have shown that they can get down in a stance and guard people. It's nothing really fancy. They are still obviously playing drop with Nikola Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, and Alex Caruso, and all the other perimeter defenders are fighting over screens like hell to try to make up for that fact. DeMar DeRozan still isn't the best defender in the world, and Zach LaVine will still get his ass backdoor cut every single game, but at least he competes in terms of one-on-one defense. But the Bulls being 5th in defensive rating definitely surprised me, and with that, we're going to find out if, 1, the offensive rating, which is super encouraging, to be honest, because I thought the Bulls were going to be good offensively, but I thought they were going to take a bit to find themselves. We're more importantly going to see if the defensive rating is real. So the Bulls' next 11 games, if you look at the schedule that I have up here, are up against teams that were in the playoffs last year, or in the Warriors' case, a playoff caliber team that has a well retooled roster and is looking poised to be finishing in the top 4 in the Western Conference. So if NBA fans and Bulls fans alike are looking to see what the Bulls are made of, well, we're going to get a few answers definitely in the next handful of games or so. Usually don't like to judge a team early, although we all like to fight back the urge to have quick takes after 1 game or 2 games or whatever, or early part of the season, especially when we all know that teams are trying to figure it out. But after about 15 or 20 games or so, you can get an idea of some of the team's habits, tendencies, and all that stuff, and how they are going to improve on them as the season evolves. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing from the Bulls, because I have the Bulls as a playoff team. In my Eastern Conference rankings, my tier rankings, I have them in the same tier as the New York Knicks for the 7th and 8th seeds. So far, it looks like they're about to smash those projections and I have to redo my tier list. But how deep of a run the Bulls can make, how good they can be, how good a lot of players on the roster can be when it all coalesces together. Those are some of the questions I'm looking forward to see being answered as they play this rough part of the schedule, especially because a lot of these games on the schedule will be on the road. So that will be another good test for an up and rising playoff team. How well do you perform on the road in hostile environments and all that good stuff? I'm also looking forward to seeing how they sort of adjust to the Patrick Williams injury. I think a lot of people were expecting too much out of Patrick Williams in his second year. Remember, the guy is only 20. His offensive game, it looks smooth because his shot is aesthetically pleasing. He glides up and down the floor. He has nice touch, especially in the 15 to 17 foot range as he continues to evolve and extend his range out from 3. But I think a lot of people were heaping too much responsibility on Patrick Williams because he was seen as the linchpin to kind of make this projected starting lineup work. The starting lineup of Ball, LaVine, DeRozan, Pat, and Vooch was really porous offensively. They had a 98.5 offensive rating, but they outscored opponents by plus 11 because their defensive rating, they were just hellacious defensively at 87.5. But a lot of their better lineups were used when Alex Caruso would be in the lineups with Ball, LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic. Some of the Bulls' other lineups that are better offensively also involved Caruso and some other form of guards entering the lineup. So now that Pat Williams is out, it looks like the Bulls are going to roll with Javonte Green replacing that spot, which kind of makes sense because the Bulls, I like how the Bulls can flow into their lineups with the players that they have. And so to kind of keep the consistency going in terms of rotation, I think starting Javonte Green, that would bump up Derrick Jones Jr.'s minutes, is kind of the right move to go here, because then the Bulls can flow into their second most used lineup and their most effective lineup so far, and the lineup that was most effective in closing out the Utah Jazz recently, which is, of course, the Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Zach LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic lineup, which has an offensive rating so far in about nearly 80 possessions or so of 120.8. And they still keep their hellacious defensive numbers with a defensive rating of 93.7. So I imagine this lineup is going to be used a lot. And then, of course, Billy Donovan, the head coach, is going to have a token spot there basically for the Patrick Williams injury, whether it be Javonte Green on some nights or Derrick Jones Jr. on some other nights. But I like so far what I've seen from the Bulls just in terms of offensively. They have a closer to go to in the last 2 minutes of a game besides Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. And DeMar DeRozan is somebody who can get his own shot anywhere within inside the arc. He's a mid-range master, and although mid-range is frowned upon, if you have one of the best mid-range artists in the game, you utilize that weapon because it is an unconventional weapon in this day and age in terms of modern basketball. Just finding players that know how to make shots aside from three-pointers and getting to the rim and making those mid-range shots efficiently is really rare. So I think the Bulls, as they tinker with the lineups and their sets and how they will operate in the closing minutes of close games, they're just going to have a more diverse attack in the closing seconds of a game, which is why I like the DeRozan signing. Not to mention he became a better playmaker in San Antonio, but having Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso there to cover up the defensive mistakes of DeRozan and LaVine while Vooch is in a drop coverage, that's been huge for them. Not only that, Alex Caruso is a really good defender, not as big obviously as Patrick Williams and will probably get roasted by bigger wings, but Caruso can still guard at the point of attack. He can guard guards and he's an unselfish player. He'll make the right pass, much like Lonzo Ball. I like a lot of the skills from these different players up and down the Bulls roster. Maybe I was a little bit too conservative with my preseason projections of the Bulls because, again, I did like their offseason. I just wasn't as high on their outcome as some other people were. But again, this next stretch of games, these next 10 or 11 games against all these playoff caliber teams are really going to tell me a lot about the Bulls, how their offense can be improved on, because if you look at the Bulls shot chart diet, they take a lot of mid-rangers and get to the rim a lot, but they don't convert enough at the rim. They shoot a high percentage from mid-range. They also shoot a high percentage from three, but they're one of the lowest three-point shooting teams in the NBA, but they have a lot of shooters who can knock them down. So we'll see how their shots change. We'll see how their defense will change, how the rotation decisions will change as the season goes along. But these next 10 to 11 games are going to tell us a lot about the Bulls and just how real they are.